Chapter 11.8, Graphing in the Coordinate Plane. So this may be new to some of you, so let's talk about the vocabulary before we get started on the examples. So our first vocab word today is coordinate plane. A coordinate plane is the surface formed by the intersection of two number lines. So this whole thing right here, this is an example of a coordinate plane. I have two number lines, one going this way. We call this one Y, and one going this way, and we call this one X. Now, those two intersecting number lines intersect right here at what we call the origin. Okay, the origin is this point right here. Where the two meet, we call that 0, 0. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay? Now, the two intersecting number lines form four sections, and we call those sections quadrants. So starting up here, this is quadrant 1, all of this. All of this area right here, this is all quadrant 1. All of this over here, this is all quadrant 2. This is all quadrant 3. And over here we have quadrant 4. And you'll notice that they're written in Roman numerals. So let's kind of clear some of this off a little bit. So we have a nice clean coordinate graph again, coordinate plane. Okay, so again, we have the vertical axis. The line is called the axis. Okay, that's the number line. It's the axis. The vertical one is called Y. The horizontal number line is called X. And we can identify any place on this coordinate plane if we can identify the X and the Y value. When we do that, we get what we call an ordered pair. An ordered pair is a pair of numbers that describes the location. And an ordered pair is always written with parentheses, inside parentheses, and it is always written with the X coordinate first, a comma, and then the Y coordinate. So if you look at these axes, you notice we have 0, 0, or the origin right here in the center. As we move up the number line, we count positively, 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice also that the numbers are on the lines of the graph, not in the spaces. You want those numbers to be on the lines. As we go down, we count negatively, -1, -2, -3, -4, etc. The same thing with X. X, we count 1, 2, 3, 4 moving to the right, and -1, -2, -3, etc. moving to the left. Again, notice that those numbers are written on the lines, not in the spaces. We do that so that we can identify where those two lines intersect. So let's start with example 1. Find the coordinates of point C. So here we see point C. Now, notice on this coordinate plane, they numbered every other line. Sometimes people will do that just so that it gets your coordinate plane a little less messy, a little less cluttered, I should say. It's not necessarily messy, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write in the other ones right here. Just because. So, with a coordinate pair, or an ordered pair, remember we always write it as X, Y. So if I follow C down this way, I'm going to see that it crosses the x-axis here at 1. So 1 is my x-coordinate. If I follow C this way, I see it's going to cross the y-axis at 3. So the coordinate pair for C is 1, 3. Let's go ahead and do quick check 1A together, and then I'll let you do 1B and C on your own. So this time it's going to ask you, what is the coordinate pair for B? Again, we write it x, y. So if I follow B down this way, I'm going to see that it's going to cross the x-axis at -3. If I take it across this way, I see that it's going to cross the y-axis at 2. So point B is located at -3, 2. All right, let's talk about example 2. In example 1, we were given some points and asked to write their ordered pair. Now we're going to do the reverse. Graph point 3, 2 on a coordinate plane. So the first thing that you will need to do is you will need to draw a coordinate plane. For quick check 2, you can put all of the points on the same plane. You don't need to redraw it every time. So what does a coordinate plane have to have? Well, it has to have a y-axis. The y-axis goes on forever, so it has an arrow at each end. I have to have an x-axis. Again, it goes on forever, so it has an arrow at each end. Notice that my axes are drawn directly on the lines from the graph, which is why all of this must be on graph paper and use those lines. I don't want to see something that looks like this. Okay, this is a no-no. We do not draw axes on spaces, we draw them on lines. So let's get rid of all of that. Guess I'm gonna have to erase that. Okay, so here I have my two axes. I need to number them. 1, 2, 3, 4. -1, -2, -3. 1, 2, 3. -1, -2, -3. Now, I don't usually write 0, but you can if you want to. Just write it once, knowing that that is for x and for y. So now I have my graph. Do not draw a box around it. Okay? Sometimes, even though you think you're boxing your answer, I don't want a box around it. I just want your coordinate plane. Now, I want 3 and 2. So I'm going to start with my x coordinate. So x equals 3. So x is going to cross right here at 3. And I see that my y is going to be 2, so I know my point is going to go up this way. My y value is 2. So I'm going to cross my y value here at 2, and I'm going to head this way, and I want to see where the 2 intersect. They intersect right here on this corner. So I'm going to draw a point, and we call that point P, so I'm going to go ahead and label that P. Now, you do not need to draw the lines. For example, if I wanted to graph, let's say I wanted to graph point Z at -2, -1. I don't need to draw the dashed lines to see where they intersect. I can move to -2 on the x-axis, move down to -1 on the y-axis, and draw my point and label it Z. That's completely fine. If it helps you to draw the little dashed lines to see where they intersect, for now that's fine too. Eventually you'll want to try and get away from that, but whatever works for you right now. So let's talk about example 3. A student drew a map of certain locations in relation to home. A, identify the coordinates of the library. So here's my library. So the library, and of course I'm going to label it, start my parentheses. I see it crosses the x-axis at -2, and then we'll cross the y-axis at 1. And I know it crosses the y-axis at 1 because I see that it's counting by 2s, and it skipped this one, so this has to be 1. If this is 0 and this is 2, this has to be 1. Now B, you leave the library and ride your scooter 2 blocks north and then 4 blocks east. At which building do you arrive? So I see north is up, so I'm going 2 blocks up. Let's change my color here so it's a little easier to see. So I'm going 2 blocks up, and then I'm going 4 blocks east, which is to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I end up at the grocery store. Okay, that's it for examples. Work through those QCs, and if you have any questions, I'll answer them the next time I see you.